Hey everybody, it's Bob Goodwin and welcome to another episode of Career Club's Cool Companies You Should Know. If you're not familiar with Career Club, please check us out at career.club, where we're using proven sales tools and techniques to help people find a career that matters to them. This episode is actually pre-recorded due to the holidays. So while we won't be able to take live questions, please feel free to always drop in a comment. Also, if for whatever reason you got started late with this or you need to leave early, you can always rewatch this on LinkedIn or download it on your favorite podcast platform. I'd also like to thank my colleague, Joey Pace, who makes all this happen. So Joey, thank you so much. And with that, I would like to introduce my friend and our guest, Hunter Thurman, the president of Alpha Diver. Hunter, welcome.
Hey, Bob. Thanks. Great to be here.
No, it's great to have you. Thanks so much. So we actually had you on previously where we talked about some of the psychology and the neuroscience with people in job search, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And would highly recommend people listen to that. At the same time, I'm a big fan of what you guys do at Alpha Diver. And I thought you'd be just the perfect candidate to be on a cool company that I think clients should know about. So again, welcome. I'm super glad to have you.
Thanks. High praise coming from you to be in Bob's circle of cool companies. So,
well, something like that. So as is our want, we've done this before, but we'd love to just, for people that don't know you and haven't met you before, just a little bit to get to know you as a human. So a little bit first, where were you born and raised?
Born and raised in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is about the last thing most people expect me to say, but was born and raised in the Southwest and made my way to Ohio for school. And now we're based in Cincinnati, and I've been here, I guess, ever since.
Well, awesome. So you said so a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I'm married to my wonderful wife, Emily, and we have 4 kids ranging from a sophomore in high school down to a third grader. So we're out of the weeds with real little kids, but now we've got all the trappings of student athletes, I guess I'd say.
Well, there you go. At least you have college to look forward to, right?
That's right. A couple years away, which is like total mind blower, but
yeah, well, because I don't meet many other fathers of 4, so that's fun. And as I always tell people, it's not a challenge till you're outnumbered. So you're playing zone defense with your kids.
Yeah.
And you said school. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Miami of Ohio, which is an hour or so outside of Cincinnati.
Out in a cornfield in Oxford.
Right.
Know it well.
Right.
Yeah. And just a little bit about your career arc.
Yeah, I've been in the insights and strategy world for 22 years, I guess. I started I thought I wanted to be in advertising, work at an ad agency, which I did. And I quickly found that I really liked the strategy and the planning piece of it back then, and the insights, the research and consumer understanding piece more than the production and the creative development side of it. So really started to focus my career there and have been in the insights and strategy world since.
And where do we find you when you're not at Alpha Diver? Sounds like maybe some kids sporting events, but what do you like to do? What are your hobbies?
There's the honest answer and the aspirational answer. And the honest answer, it depends on the year, but typically on a sideline of a soccer field for my 2 daughters who are great athletes, great soccer players, or my son who's a gifted long snapper in football. So we love watching that. And then my youngest son is multi-sport. He still hasn't committed just yet. So we spend a lot of time doing that. But my real passion, hobby is fishing, bass fishing and fly fishing. So I grew up doing that, and I still do it as much as I can.
No, that's awesome. You're outside a lot, it sounds like.
I do. I love the outdoors. And that's a good way. Being by the soccer field is one way to do it, but I like being out in the woods, out on the water.
There you go. So the format for Cool Companies is starting off with, what was the business problem? What was the market need that you saw? And you guys started when?
2011.
2011. So 11 years. Congratulations. That's really quite a statement. But what was the need that you saw in the marketplaces that kind of led you to maybe there's a better way of doing this?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of 2 answers to it. There was the need I had in my career, and there was the need I saw and we continue to see. in the market. And the need in the market is the oldest one in the book. I mean, it's a cliche: actionable insights. Things that are consumer understanding that is true and accurate, and which empowers the beneficiary, the teams using it, to go all the way through activation, to guide every activity that they do. So that's always been the business challenge that we solved, and that continues to be. My personal challenge was, in doing this work, if I was being honest at that time, I had this feeling that we were kind of making it up as we went. We were using a lot of digital, a lot of mobile, a lot of the things that were very in vogue at that time. Not that those are out of vogue now. But there was not, and in retrospect, we were doing it in what's called the model-free way. We were going out and collecting data and asking people and observing people and gathering all that, and then coming back to the ranch to try to make sense of it and to model it. And at the time, I didn't know it was model free, but I learned that, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. I was just very dissatisfied with it, and I was seeking something more durable, more tangible, as a means by which, a framework by which to go out and conduct research and gather true insights.
Would a more colloquial way of saying model free, winging it?
It felt like I'll speak for myself. It felt like we were winging it. Exactly. I didn't want to wing it. I did not want to have my career be 20 years in and say, well, I've been winging it a long time, so I really know how to wing it.
Yeah.
So that was what I felt in my heart.
Yeah. And it's having done a lot of primary research, and that's how I kind of cut my teeth and on the insights side of life. Is you do see that the companies are kind of guessing on what the approach is that they should take, and they read an article and they say, well, let's go try that, and they read it. And even in the largest organizations where they've got multiple product lines or BUs, they're trying all kinds of stuff and maybe repeating previous mistakes, and another unit notice, hey, that doesn't work. And there's just a lot of winging it going on.
Well, and when you're doing that, it's the old kind of shiny objects. What else have you got? I remember at the time it was like, if it's on mobile, then it's good. And it's kind of like, mobile's just a medium. It doesn't change that you're just asking people why they do things.
That's
or
right.
Trying to observe them. So I that's spot on.
So the antithesis of model free would be model based, right?
Model based, exactly.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what that means more specifically?
Yeah, it's a term from academia. So as I was beginning this journey, and I felt I knew a little bit about the world of psychology, what I would have called psychology at that time, and as I felt that had a path forward. And so someone introduced me to now very close teammate, Dr. T. Siggy Hale, PhD, who at the time was running a neuroscience lab at UCLA. We know him as Siggy. Someone introduced me to him and said, you should talk to this neuroscientist. He's doing some really interesting things. You guys are talking about similar things. And I was kind of like, neuroscientist? At that time, I thought a neuroscientist was like, I equated almost like a neurosurgeon, like more like the physiology. I had no idea really what that meant. And as we started talking, and I sort of explained the frustration that I had with the way we were doing it, as I just did with you, he just kind of said, oh, you're working model free. And I went, I am. He said, yeah, you guys are going out and gather, it sounds like this field is gathering data, gathering information, winging it, and coming back and trying to make really cool PowerPoints out of it. And it's like, yeah, that's everything we do in academia is model based. And I said, tell me more. And model based is essentially where you use an established framework. And then instead of going out in the world and kind of trying to think of everything you should ask or look at or observe, you're going out and mapping data, whether qualitative or quantitative. You're mapping data back to a model. In other words, you know what you're looking for.
Yes.
You don't go into the woods and start wandering around. You go with a map and say, look, we're going to find some discoveries along the way, but we know what we're looking for. And when we find something, we know which bucket to put it back in the model. We know we found something relevant to that component of the model. He immediately said, that's how academic research is done. And I immediately found it to be exactly what I was looking for. And
Yep.
exactly, the anecdote to the problem that I had identified.
So maybe that's a good opportunity then to pivot into, well, what is the model then that Siggy showed you and you guys have adopted, and why does it?
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you. In the neuroscience world, they're studying very academic things. A lot of Siggy's work, clinical work at UCLA, was in like ADHD and attentional factors. And as I explained to him, what we do, that we're trying to help typically, consumer goods companies figure out tensions in people's lives, what people need and how they can serve those needs. He, just as I was ignorant to his world, he kind of went, really? Companies are interested in that? And I said, yeah. And he said, and they pay money for it? Yeah, they spend a lot of money trying to figure that out. And his immediate response was, well, from a neuroscience standpoint, I mean, human behavior is pretty predictable. We know why people do what they do. And I kind of went, again, tell me more. I've been at this 10 years and I'd never heard that before. And it's not to say, and that's kind of a third rail of a statement, and particularly in academic circles, when I say things like that, they go, that's not true. I'm not saying that I can, we predict if someone's going to turn left or right. What we can predict is that people will have reactions to stimuli. There is a predictable set of reactions, and those reactions relate to how people make decisions. So we're not going to predict if somebody picks Coke or Pepsi. But what we can do is say, look, when somebody's confronted with that, here are the limited set of variables, the modeled set of variables that are relevant. It's not as chaotic. It's not as, model free and vague as it often appears. And so, what we've done over the last 11 years is apply this model that Siggy had, identified and was using, which was based on a lot of previous research. I mean, it was not Siggy's totally unique invention, but we've harnessed it and applied it to this purpose, to enterprise. And essentially, the core of our model, we sometimes refer to as the 9 whys. And that's these 9 factors, these 4 predictable drivers and these 5 predictable barriers that explain consumer decision making and behavior, and which we're able to measure at a quantitative level. So everything we measure is back to those predictable, durable barriers, and that's predictable factors, I should say, and that's the core of the model-based approach.
Well, okay, so that's where I was hoping we would go. So the framework really is around drivers and barriers, that are durable, that people consistently display based on stimuli that they're presented with.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Now, you said that this is based in neuroscience, and you maybe got a little confused on, is this like brain surgery, literally, or other kind of physiological things? Neuroscience is not, in market research, consumer insights, it's not a new idea anymore, but it also seems like it's gone through some permutations with, getting feedback from sweat glands and eye movement and facial expressions, and looking for where those windows into a consumer's mind, and into his or her emotions and things like that. Can you talk why this isn't voodoo, and that there's actually real science, known science behind this, not just Siggy's little version of the world? But
it's interesting. I mean, one of the things that, as I mentioned, when I learned what a neuroscientist actually is, I was shocked by how data heavy they are. I mean, our whole analytics team, our database that we built, and all the analysis that we run, and the algorithm and the analytics platform is built and run by neuroscientists. They are like major data wonks, like sophisticated data analysis. So in that regard, I mean, it's not boring. It's really interesting, but it's a lot of data. It's not a lot of, and we mess, and in Siggy's old world, the shower caps and all that, that's EEG. There's these measures of, and there is a lot of that with like smart watches and smart devices measuring skin conductance and sweat glands. And we messed around with that in the early years. There was, sort of the early days of what they called ambulatory measures, like devices that people could wear and that could test some of that. It doesn't connect to real life. It doesn't connect to, a given category of goods. And so what we've evolved to in kind of our unique invention is this really a survey, a digital survey that has very unique stimuli, but people just interact with the screen just like they would a regular survey, just interacting with very different, there's a lot of like word clouds and these bipolar activities that are very carefully designed to reveal their psychology. And then it creates quantitative, statistically measured data. And so, I mean, to your point, more and more people, as sort of the state of the art evolves, a lot of people go, oh, so you're doing eye tracking? Are you doing this, that, and the other? And look, I mean, there's a place for those, but at the really, what we're doing at the really foundational understanding of decision making, and then how that manifests in people's behavior and how to influence it, we're looking at them at a much more psychological level than some of those more splashy headline kind of weird applications of neuroscience. As Siggy calls it, we're doing paper and pencil brain imaging. Of course, it's not paper and pencil, but it's having people interact with simple stimuli that's giving us it's explaining them between the ears without having to put them in the lab like he used to.
What have you guys learned? How much of this is we're pretty rational, and how much of this is we're pretty emotional, or maybe something else?
Yeah, I mean, there's all these stats that get thrown around. 95% of decision making is emotionally driven. I mean, the long and short of it is the subconscious factors are pivotal in understanding, human behavior, understanding consumer behavior. And we don't have access to our own subconscious. A given person can't access his or her own subconscious. So, even as you ask somebody why they do things, they think they're explaining it to you. There are these narratives that are created, and, stimuli comes into our senses. So sight is the fastest. So just imagine, there's just endless, overwhelming amount of stimuli that's constantly coming at us, and our emotional brain, our old brain, filters it and filters up the most relevant things to the conscious brain to think about and to act on. So yes, emotion is a huge piece of it. That's a factor of what we're measuring, but really what we're getting to is which of the decision-making mechanisms in the brain is making decisions relative to a given category. So, people doing their taxes, most of us shift into a pretty rational mindset. Facts and figures, comparative, trying to be accurate, arming ourselves with information, et cetera. But when you're walking through Kroger or scrolling through Walmart.com, that's, there are far more factors at play. And that's where these subconscious pieces beyond the rational come in: social, sensory and experiential, and then our impulsive decision-making lens that we use. All four of those, from the rational to the social to the sensorial to the impulsive, are at play. And a combination of them will explain how a person's making decisions relative to an everyday product.
Actually, you kind of take me to a place here. So how much of this is I'm hardwired to make decisions a certain way, and you can kind of tease that out of me through the survey, even though I may not be able to self-describe that way? Yeah. And how much of it is contextual? And well, it depends, Bob. And sometimes you act this way and sometimes you act that way, although you're still the same person.
Yeah, there's definitely some truth in the nature versus nurture meme. You're born with a nature, you have a set of personality traits and things, and then the nurture is your contextual upbringing, and they're both influential. That was another one of the first things Siggy pointed out, is that context is key. You are the analogy I sometimes use is thinking about myself. I talked about my kids when I'm at home with my kids versus when I'm here at work versus when I'm on a guy's weekend with my college friends. I'm not a different person. I don't have a split personality, but my decision-making criteria is dramatically different in those different contexts, and different of those lenses are at play. Exactly, thus is the case with consumer decision-making. We will each have a resting state kind of in our daily life. Some of us are more rational, some of us use our senses and are more emotional. And yet when we shift into different contexts, when we're making decisions on breakfast cereal or frozen food or soft drinks or healthcare products, different lenses. We're not always the same person. We don't always make decisions based on the same thing. And that's the key of what you need to measure. Yes, how is the person generally, and relative to your category, how does that shift, and what's influencing their behavior, for a given product, space, or category.
When you're interacting with clients, I'm going to guess, and this could be wrong, but there's a decent amount of teaching that goes on, that you've kind of got to get people up to a base level of understanding of what you're doing, or are you finding more people understand consumers at this level?
It's interesting. We spent a lot of years really harping on the science and trying to teach partners, clients, the science. What we've found, what we've gotten to, have you ever heard the phrase research plus plus?
No.
It's Greg Archibald of Green Book mentioned it to me, and Kristen Luck introduced the phrase to me of research plus plus. And what both of them basically said is, the companies that are really solving problems for people have a proprietary, unique measure, which we do, and are pairing that with like a really capable consulting practice. And so we've pondered kind of a pure SaaS model, like, should we just collect this data and share it? And what we found is, the data are powerful and interesting, but explaining it, kind of that last mile of, here's what this psychological profile means. Here's why they're making this decision. Here's why you're seeing this challenge with your business. And here's the way out of it. And not the way out of it like, get the planogram right, execute better. Saying, look, here's where they're going to be influenced from a media perspective. Here's the way in which they want to be shopping. Here's how you can advantage, the brand and the retail activation. Here's how you should look, feel, and act in terms of your communications and even like packaging. We can get really, really tangible into that guidance. And that's really at the core of a valuable output. And we found that, yes, the data matter. That's how we can give great consulting guidance. But the storytelling, the explaining it, our outputs, we call them playbooks. It should be something very actionable. And that's the key of those two pieces together.
Well, one of the things that I've seen you present in Wall Street conferences and stuff is around social media. Because obviously that's a big advertising venue and other communications. Could you explain to folks real quick kind of your all's take and where the neuroscience meets social media?
Yeah, I mean, the state of the industry on social media is still, where are the eyeballs? And it's like, okay, all the young people are on TikTok. We'll put our content there. And that sort of is the conversation even really sophisticated organizations are having. People, just those four drivers, there's 4 reasons someone goes on Instagram or any of them: to learn, the rational; to connect, which is what, the ostensible purpose of social media, the social; to explore, to take a little vacation, to watch some funny videos; or to brag, to show off.
I thought that was the main point of social media. Go ahead.
You scroll through it and you'll go, yep. You see it in your own behavior, and you can see it in your contacts. But if somebody's there to brag and show off, they're not terribly interested in your functional nutrition content, or they're not terribly interested in the recommendation of an influencer or a friend of theirs of something. If they're there to learn, they're not terribly interested in your immersive experiential video about how your product is made, or the provenance of the ingredients or things like that. So the point is, you have to align why they're there. They're there for a reason. Now, it's not just, as I said, you can do it in a model-based way. They're one of 4 reasons they're there. If you align your content to that, that's what actually drives behavior, versus just being in front of them and hoping it influences them.
If I'm a brand and I have that understanding, would it be then that I don't take the same creative?
Absolutely.
Right. So what would maybe an example of that be?
Well, I made this, I said this at a conference the other day when someone said, what's the business problem you solve? And I said, it's kind of the existential question. Who are the people? Where can you reach them? When should you reach them, and how? What should the creative content be? Which, I feel like has always been sort of impossible. The answers to that becomes this very vague kind of hand waving response. That's the level we're getting down to. And so, putting the right content, the right kind of creative, and, you can get really deep into the weeds, but at the simplest level, it's, what's going to stand out to them. If they're there to learn, it's facts and it's numbers, facts and figures, arm them with information. If they're there to connect, it's things that enable that, contests and promotions and things that are viral, and let them share it. If they're there to explore, let them discover something new. We find that, obviously a lot of people on social media and in e-com, that's a big driver. You think about, we said to a client the other day, a screen is, it's like their window to the world. It's their ability to go anywhere they want. It's not their ability to find exactly what they're looking for as efficiently as possible. So serve that, let them discover things. And if they're there to brag, and that's, a relevant part of your audience, let your brand be a part of that. Let them conspicuously consume, provide access to cool opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have, things like that. So it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple, but even just, back to the model base, even knowing that there are 4 reasons and recognizing that, it's really, really powerful.
So we've talked a lot about the problem that you guys solve, how you do it uniquely. Let's talk for a minute about Alpha Diver itself as a company. So you've been a business owner for 11, going on 12 years.
Yeah.
How would you describe the culture at Alpha Diver?
Yeah, culture is something I've always struggled with. It's always felt that one of the things I've identified is that whether in culture or corporate mission or corporate purpose, a lot of things end up being very generic, right? Like, we stand for integrity. We stand for, we're curious. And one thing from a kind of, turning the lens on ourselves as I've pondered this is, you really can't say that there's something about your culture unless the opposite could also be true. So I think, when you think about it, things like integrity to me kind of ring hollow, because no company could stand for deceit.
I don't know, FTX might.
They didn't put it on a plaque. Let's put it that way. That one didn't make the website. But a couple of things that we've, I've observed that I think are really central to our culture when I ask the team. One thing that's been a big change for us is we've gone from a office base. I'm here in our world headquarters here in Cincinnati, to really a hybrid model, and not just the people here, but we have team members in Boston and Cleveland, and Paris, people all over the place, New York, and some of them, are purely remote. That's been I never would have imagined that, before COVID and all of that, but it's really given us a lot of capability in that way. And a couple of things that I hear that I think are really central to our culture are focus, and support. When a person can understand and know what they should focus on, and a lot of that, is the model-based way, and the way we build the team, you can really do your best work. You can really do your best thinking. And to me, that's legit, because you could also have a culture where everybody's a deep generalist, sort of everybody does everything. A lot of consulting practices are set up that way. And we used to be a lot more like that, where kind of everybody did everything. We've really evolved to this place where each of us knows what she or he should be focused on. And that's really empowering. And then with that, then everybody, feels very supported. And I was talking with a teammate. I've actually never met this person, Bethany, one of our psychologists. She lives in Cleveland, which isn't far from Cincinnati, but we've never met in person. We've been working together for years now, I guess. And she said, I kind of said, I was hesitant about a remote hire. I think she was maybe our second, full remote hire. And she said, it's funny you say that, because I was absolutely, it was a hard no for me. I did not want to be remote, because I had done it before and I felt isolated and lonely and not part of the team. And she's like, here, I feel very supported. I feel very close to everybody. And to me, that's a big piece of the culture that's important in the modern era of remote work. And I think a lot of that is because, she knows, in Bethany's case, she knows what to be focused on. And each of us feels really, really supported by the other. And just as, focus versus generalist, either could be a good culture. Focus or support, there are cultures that are more competitive. every person for themselves. Look, this is, 10 of you come in, 3 of you will come out. And that's not our culture, but that could be, there are companies like that. So to me, it's not sexy. There's not a plaque that says, focus and support, but those two things are very empowering to me and are the things I hear back from the team.
As you guys continue to grow, are there certain either roles that you guys are looking for? And one of the things I always like to ask on these cool companies is there certain talent qualities that you're looking for?
Yeah. Our consulting practice, if you will continue to grow. We're growing and we'll continue to through next year. So that's probably the next kind of swath of talented people that I'm looking for. And the way we typically work is the neuroscience and psychology team stands up the studies, conducts the research, manages the database, and provides what we call the technical narrative. Then the kind of other side, it's almost like left brain, right brain, if you will. Kind of right brain takes it and creates what we call the conceptual narrative, which is the story, explaining it, framing it, putting it into real life examples, et cetera. And so the ability to this one's, it's a broad one, and it's, not everybody's great at it, but the ability to see data, understand the signal, of course, we're able to then explain a lot of the very tangible whys and communicate that into, analogies and memes and memorable, human truths. That's really, at the broadest sense, what that role does.
As you think about personality traits, things that when you're interviewing somebody and you're like, this values align, culture add, are there things that particularly catch your eye? And that can be positive or negative. Here's the short answer: neural diversity.
Okay. How's that for hiring criteria? I used to hire people inadvertently that were just like me, that had my personality. We would get along in an interview. It's like we mirrored each other. Our team now is so neurally diverse, meaning thinking styles are dramatically different. So what we're looking for is complementary mindsets. And there's even a thing, we call it the Hale scale. Siggy created this scale. You've seen it, that people will go through, and it's this real quick kind of little kind of version of our measure that reveals someone's thinking style. And we're looking for people who bring a complementary lens to the way that we look at it. So two of our leads, Julie and Mary, play really complementary roles, for example, in creating these stories. Julie's much more on the feeler side of things, much more sensory, much more experiential. Mary's very uniquely talented on the analytics side and identifying where the patterns emerge, and those two together are really powerful. So that's where, as we continue to build the team, we're not looking for one thing specifically, at a given moment, but we're looking for people that are very different from one another from a thinking style and thinking capacity perspective, and we found that to be the key, the equation to a winning team.
Well, and personal experience and otherwise, that mirroring and hiring people that I like. Well, you're not hiring neighbors, you're hiring a team. And then you think about the word team, not everybody plays the same position on a team.
That's exactly right.
You don't have 11 quarterbacks or 5 point guards or whatever. You need different people that serve different roles.
Yeah.
Together, they're better. What did David Taylor say? None of us is better than all of us.
That's right.
And it's part of that diversity that you're speaking to.
Well, and it all goes back to the model. I mean, Siggy will confirm an idealized team has all 4 roles: a very rational mindset, a very social one that can rally the troops and gain alignment and keep everybody rowing in the same direction. Somebody that's very, feeler, emotionally intelligent, able to, relate it and keep the soul and the warmth. And then somebody who's a little more of a hard charger. We talk about the person who brags on social media. That's not a bad trait. And on a team, you've got to have somebody who will go and kind of compete and get things done and, fight for your team in the broader organization. Those four neural profiles together are like, that's an optimized team.
So let's circle this back to your beginning comment about having this action orientation, action bias, activation bias.
Yeah.
Can you maybe bring it together with a story that might show how somebody went from model free to model based, use sort of the empirical science of neuroscience to solve a business problem in a way that maybe they would not have gotten to otherwise?
Yeah. There's one that I mean, of course, there's lots of cool stories, but one that's particularly interesting to me because it brings in a lot of facets of kind of what we see out in the market is if you look at summer parties. So unfortunately, we're just coming out of summer, but think about 3 or 4 months ago. If you are a manufacturer, a marketer of soda, chips, and beer, you live and die by the summer. So all the soda, chips, and beer get consumed on Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, and all those cookouts, those informal points in between. Of course, holiday coming up is a big piece, but you live and die based on that. And so a portfolio of those 3 categories, a multi-billion-dollar portfolio of chips, soda, and beer came to us. And the long story short is that for years, those categories had been kind of flat to like half a point of growth, quarter over quarter, summer to summer to summer. Everybody was the same. No brand was pulling ahead. It was just this sort of slow moving, steady Eddie ship, which was okay for a while. But as is often the case, Walmart put their foot down and said, hey, that's been fine for a while, but we're starting to lose volume to DoorDash and pizza chains and every other away from home food. You got to do something about this. You've got to figure this out. And I mean, as I said, these are billion-dollar brands. They're spending millions of dollars trying to figure this out. And they had always heard the same thing. And all their competitors had heard the same thing. And that was that, these hosts, people buying these brands for these social gatherings, people would say, well, I make decisions on what to buy based on what I think my guests will like. It makes sense, right? I mean, if you asked one of us, that's probably what we think. We think that as we're standing at the shelf or, doing our click and collect order, we think that we're, keeping everyone in mind and thinking about who's going to be there and we want them to have something they like. Everybody had activated against that insight for years and years and years, and everybody was flat to each other and the category was flat. So by measuring through this neuroscience approach, why people are making certain decisions they are, we discovered a nuance. And it wasn't like some dramatically different nuance, but what we found is that, yes, they were thinking about who was going to be at their event, but the reason they were making choices was not because they wanted the person to like it. The reason was because they wanted it to reflect their unique personality and their unique event in a way that their guest would sort of attribute to them. In other words, they didn't want the guest to go home going, boy, they had all of my favorite things there. They wanted the guest to go home and go, Hunter's party was pretty cool. That was like better than any of those I've ever been to. And there were some things that I hadn't maybe had before, but that were like, now I think he's cooler because I had them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, no one's going to, write that in their journal, but that was the shift. It wasn't about the guest. It was about them. And this organization went like all in on that insight. And they really dramatically shifted the way they activated from digital. They did a really cool digital program, again, to the specific people that we had identified in these channels with very different content. So instead of just, imagery that you'd expect, lots of people having fun, enjoying all these products, they made it much more about the person. They kind of flipped the aperture on, it's about the thrower, the party thrower, if you will. And all the way through activation. I mean, even the way, and you imagine in Kroger, Walmart, or whatever, there's these huge freestanding displays, the heuristics, so all the perceptual things that we know about these profiles, these psychological profiles, they really applied it very aggressively. And when they ran the program, summer over summer, quarter to quarter, it grew their business like 10%.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So it was a major, and you think about it was flat, 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 flat. And then 10% was a big deal on brands that size. So that's a great example where the highest level understanding of why drove all the way down to the digital path to purchase, all the way into like even retail activation and made huge impact.
I mean, just that's a great story. And at least one aspect of that resonates is when you do a frontal assault asking a consumer, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You're going to get an answer. And
Right.
back in model free, people take that as the truth. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Until you figure out, well, actually, they don't even understand
That's
why
right.
they're doing what they're doing. You can pull it out of them
Yeah.
and put it into the model and then understand, this is what's really going on.
Yeah.
But the other piece that I've just always admired about what you guys do and why I wanted to have you on was this isn't, just another segmentation study that somebody pays a bunch of money for and sits in a corner and holds the door open, right? And, proverbially gets dusty.
Yeah.
And, well, we need to go update our segmentation model or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like, well, we should. It's nice to know.
Yeah.
But nobody knows what to do with it. But the fact that you can actually very specifically activate, whether it's on premise, in store, digitally, however it is that, a marketing / sales campaign gets fully executed, and that actually drives business results.
Yeah, I mean, we are essentially doing segmentation. We're creating these profiles and identifying how many profiles are there of those four. And it's a combination of the four drivers. And we haven't even talked about the barriers, but they range from price into the more emotional barriers. We're basically profiling people. And we do have it, I would say, a third of our projects or a third of our engagements, somebody comes and says, well, we have this segmentation. And we're starting to move away from it, but at times we'll put a typing tool, a segmentation typing tool into our study and actually profile. And then we're able to go, okay, yeah, I mean, the segment was 80% right. Here's what was missing from the traditional segmentation. And more importantly, here's what you go do about it.
Yes.
So we're finding it's less and less important to actually do the typing tool and line up the data. But exactly your point, a lot that is still so common for an organization to have the segmentation that nobody knows what to do with. And it's sort of a great example and an expensive example of the problem that we set out to solve 11 years ago. We don't want, nobody wants stuff like that. And nobody wants things that are interesting, but not useful. Everything's interesting, few things are useful. We're interested in the combination, not the form.
Well, I mean, and we'll wrap it up here, but what's cool is you guys are sort of cracking the code on the most interesting problem, which is why do we weird humans do what the heck it is that we do?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of companies out there that are very keen on solving just for that. If people want to learn more about Alpha Diver, what's the best way to do that?
Our website has lots of kind of goes through the overview that I just provided, which is I see it there, alpha-diver.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. We share a lot of things from our database, things that we speak about or articles and things. So if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn or the company page on LinkedIn, that's a good place to sort of get a running river of content as well.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I've enjoyed this very much. As you know, I'm a big fan, and I really love what you guys do, not because it's interesting, but because it actually works. And happy to share this with our audience. And I really appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your busy day to kind of share with us, why it is that you guys do what you do, why you started the company, and wish you the best of success in 2023.
Same. Thank you. And I'm a big fan of what you're doing at Career Club. So I'm always happy to collaborate. So
awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Thank everyone for listening, and hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. And we'll look forward to seeing you in 2023 with a whole slew of new episodes. So thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.